Ai te marea tangata, te marea iwi, whakapiri mai, whakatata mai, ki te Waharoa, kia tomo kia te poho nei whare kōrero. Ko ngā pau kōrero, kua tūhono mai tēnei rā, ko Ngārimu Parata, ko Hemi Sundgren, me ko Maurice Manawatū. First and foremost, I want to send out a greeting to our panel today. A wealth of knowledge that's come to talk about tēnei mea nui te Pūrakau. Anō reira e aku rangatira, tēnā koutou katoa. Could you please give us your thoughts of what is this thing a Pūrakau?
Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, tēnā koe whiti au e tuku ana tuku nei te arawhata ki te wāhi ngaro, e whai whakaaro ai tātou ki tēnei kaupapa tātou I te rānei. Nā, te āhuatanga ki te Pūrakau, you look at the translation for Pūrakau, and it comes up with terms like myths, legends, those sorts of kupu. Hoi, story, he kōrero tuku iho, te Pūrakau. I roto I te Pūrakau, in these stories, it helps to pass down traditional knowledge and practical knowledge ki te e koe te kurahuna I roto I ngā Pūrakau. The hidden meanings behind some of the stories, in those stories. Also, ko te mea nui mo te Pūrakau ki a tātou te iwi Māori, it gives us the ability to control the narrative and how we deliver that narrative ki te hunga whakarongo I rā kōrero. With respects to how we deliver that narrative in amongst our own whānau, iwi, hapu, how we deliver that narrative or those stories with regards to other iwi, and how we deliver that narrative to the wider New Zealand and the rest of the world. Sort of stages in the way we deliver those stories and those narratives. Me te mōhio anō, ko ngā kōrero kai roto I ngā Pūrakau, e tahi he tapu. Nō reira, koina tāku te āhuatanga ki tutu I te Pūrakau, te āhuatanga ki te Pūrakau. Intergenerational, traditional, practical and technical knowledge delivered in a simple way that can last throughout the generations.
So the Ngārimu are coming from Taranaki, and I suppose such a rich history and a lot of things happen to your people. I roto I ngā rā o te ao kōhatu, nō reira e te tuaka nei Hemi. Could you please share what those Pūrakau mean to you in your iwi?
Tēnā koe Āti Awa, o tino aku muanga, aku tuaka nei noho tahi nei tēnei paepae kōrero I te rānei. Koe no e tautoko ana ngā mihi, kia haere ngā mihi, kia haere ngā mate, koe no kia haere ngā kōrero kei wainganui a tata. Kia ora e hoa Āti Awa. Yeah, I think I've been pondering on what this tēnei mea te Pūrakau, what this Pūrakau kind of kaupapa means, and I think if I could break that down as far as I can, I kind of see it as more as a system or a genealogical system that allows us a framework for us to tell our stories. Tēnei mea te pū, what is a pū? I kind of see that as he whakarāpapototanga I te kupu, e raupapa I te kupu. Tēnei mea te rākau, what is the symbol of a rākau? I think it talks to us and speaks to us about a system, a knowledge system that is able to layer kōrero intergenerationally for us to be able to understand our place in the world. And so how we layer that comes through in various generations in various ways and various types of kōrero, but ultimately Pūrakau is, for me, is a system of knowledge or a system and a way for us to be able to tell our creation stories. Talk to us about a set of values and principles that allow our people and our communities to live our life by, that give mana and context to who we are, and allow us to connect to place. So I think, in short, Āti Awa, those are kind of my views on what Pūrakau is, and I suppose we'll go into that a little bit more in depth at some point, but high level. Hope it's not too academic for people, but you know, it's a system and a genealogical tree, and the rākau is kind of formed as a symbol for us for that knowledge system.
Kia ora, Hemi, kei te tika he kōrero tā te rākau. Kare i te mō, ko te hea rākau, ka whakamahia ki awa kōrero. He oi anō, Maurice, anything to follow on from that, Maurice, especially coming from Rangitāne and Te Waipounamu, being a story itself, what do you consider Pūrakau to be?
Tēnā koutou. Whakawhitai ki a koe mō tō mihi māhana. Just what's been said is pretty impressive, really, and you know, and just to I guess recount, like Pūrakau for me are oral accounts of whānau hapuiwi traditions, really, and I see traditions as historical recollections of and also they include myths, rituals, customs of whānau hapuiwi, you know, and so they're pretty and Pūrakau is it's a pretty important tool to be used to correct the wrongs of what has been written. You know, the sad thing is is that there's a lot of stuff, especially with my iwi Ngāi Tahu and that's been written, and once published, it's seen as gospel. And Pūrakau is a way of correcting the wrong, and and I see it as crucial to us as far as evolution, and it's like opposable thumbs, you know. Opposable thumbs let us hang on to things. Pūrakau tells us what to hang on to, and it was a primary tool, or it was the main tool, pre-European of our learnings, of our teachings, and it's the repositories or the stories of our law and legends, you know. So it was used to pass along insight and strengthen the use of our memory, because our memory power, once the written word came, our memory power decreased, and so because we were oral and things were passed down, but once written, it's almost like we slackened off, and Pūrakau is about strengthening that memory.
Well, thank you, Maurice. And just on that, Ngārimu, going back to when you were growing up in Ngāti Porou, Ngā Whenua o Ngāti Porou, and just following on from what Maurice said, that once it's been written down, we've slackened off. Is there any early memories of time sitting around the fire and listening to your Pākeke talk about Pūrakau? Are you able to share some of those experiences with us?
Tēnā koe Hemi koro ko Maurice i rā kōrero. One of the first, my sort of first recollections of storytelling, te wahanga ki te Māori, ki ao, ki roto o Ngāti Porou anyway, ko tēnei mea te oriori. Now, you look at the translation of oriori, and it's called a lullaby, but it has so much more. You know, ka oriori tia te pēpi i ai i roto tonu i te kōpū o tana kōka. And through that, that's sort of goes to what Maurice was talking about it being oral, and the unconscious mind taking all that kōrero, because you know, whānau mai te pēpi ki te ao, kāre tonu i te mōhi o haha te aha, pa kai te whāngai atu ki te oriori, e tika ana mo te pēpi, putting that traditional knowledge into the baby's mind before they're even conscious of that knowledge. Tipu haere, ka ora anō e rā momo āhuatanga. Ka tipu mai, ka timata i ngā Pūrakau take ake o karangatanga hapu. Now, i roto i ao o Ngāti Porou, there's my grandmother and my aunties and my father, they always started our Pūrakau session with, there once lived 3 little princesses. Now, whakaaro ake mātou, hika, hea te momo tērā āhuatanga, but they were referring to three warrior princesses, Materoa, Tāwhipare, and Te Atakura. Through those three tipuna descend most of the descendants of Ngāti Porou. So they started, to bring in the storytelling of Te Ao Pākehā, but the way they deliver the message, but I roto I the message itself was ngā kōrero tuku iho a tātou tipuna. And so we grew up with era, ka tipu haere koe, as a young males, you start not wanting to necessarily learn the stories about old princesses, but you wanted to learn stories of warriors. So ka haere haere koe te rarau atu ki ngā kōrero tuku iho mō ngā toa, o whānau, o hapu, o karangatanga iwi. And then you get tipuna like, for me, tū whakairiora, pāka nui, where tipuna o Ngāti Porou, that my tipuna nehe Arnold Reedy coined the phrase, nā kona I paraniti ai te Ngāti Porou nei ki tō rai. That's why through those tipuna that the Ngāti Porou stamp is written on your face or put onto your face. So koina te āhuatanga e tautoko ake wā Maurice kōrero mo te kōrero āwaha, kōrero tuku iho, ki ngā reanga whakatipu.
And just going back on to what Maurice was saying about, it's also a tool to correct things that happened in the past. And I'm just thinking of lately the Ruakina na pardon, how Pūrakau helped them achieve that. And going into Taranaki, I suppose that was also maybe a tool that you guys used in terms of the parihaka and tohu kākahi and all of them. Hemi, are you able to touch on that for us, please?
Yeah, interestingly, when we have looked through some of the old writings of our old people, we've kind of almost seen this type of framework that they use to account for different times. For instance, and they were kind of set out in periods of time. So in 1860, we have ka tū te pakanga ki waitara ka kātoro te ahi ki runga ki te whenua, where, very, very short statement that said, war ravaged waitara and fire is spread across the land. But if you dive a little bit deeper into that kōrero, you know that there's this huge set of historical facts that took place at that time that are all encapsulated into this one sentence. So throughout our time here, and I've koe rei taku ao, he uru ki roto I ngā kōrero, ngā tupuna. I've kind of sought to look at what was a framework that our people used to tell these stories. And so what we've found over time is this rich layer of kōrero that our people, this tool that they used to tell kōrero from 1860 to 1866 to 62, 63, ka tai mai a ka pariera ki Te Uahau, where the Archangel Gabriel came to Te Uahau, and ka puta te atua ki Taranaki, where pai Māori became spread across the land. And we've got this rich framework of kōrero that we use to be able to bring through to the generations. And so we used that as the basis. Actually, I used it as a framework to write our historical account, because there were so many missing pieces throughout Pākehā history that we were able to apply and recorrect the wrongs, and actually shed quite a bit of light for our own people, in particular on some of the things that were some of the missing gaps in between. So for us here in Taranaki, it has tēnei mea te Pūrakau, and historical accounts and narratives were kind of encapsulated in this Pūrakau, this framework, this genealogical, this tree system that's allowed us to gain a deeper expression and understanding of who we are and our place in that historical time. Oh, actually, it continues today. So the challenge for us now is, how do we use that framework to say, what are the particular reference and points in time for us now to explain things that are going on? So in the next 100 years, our young people look back at this and say, oh, this is what was happening, and this is how we encapsulated that within the context of that system and that framework. Sorry, I hope that makes sense.
Oh, that's cool. Ngāi Tahu might want to update their Wi-Fi matua. Hui anō, just carrying on from that, Ngārimu, in terms of, because in the tourism sector, I suppose, been on the water, been in the forest, and all those kind of things that tourism provides for manuhiri coming into our country. How would somebody outside of Ngāti Porou that's got a tourism business in Ngāti Porou go about accessing those stories?
If you sort of set it out in sort of a relatively easy way to follow, etahi o ngā kōrero tuku iho o ngā Pūrakau o Ngāti Porou, ma Ngāti Porou anake e rā e whakaputa. So some of the stories in Ngāti Porou are only for Ngāti Porou to share with Ngāti Porou people. Other stories are only for Ngāti Porou to share with other iwi, and other stories are only for Ngāti Porou to share with wider New Zealand and then the rest of the world. Now, for others, you know, and hare tēnei te kupu whakaiti, whakaiti pē ki wetahi te whakamahinga, but you know, if a rāwaho were to come into Ngāti Porou and start up a tourism venture, the easiest way for him to be able to that person to deliver that kōrero would firstly be to marry a Ngāti Porou person. If that was not possible, then at least set out some sort of contribution towards Ngāti Porou that values, you know, some sort of trade. Because a tātou tipuna he we tuku me tuku tāonga, tuku koha, tuku aha, ke rānei, tuku kōrero, mo te kore whiwhi i tētahi mea. But in this day and age, now there needs to be a trade of sorts, in that mehema ko Ngāti Porou kei te tuku i ngā kōrero ki tētahi atu, so that they can deliver that story or that pūrākau through tourism to others. Then there needs to be an exchange of equal or thereabout sort of value, so that that tourism person provider could then could then go on and freely deliver that kōrero with respects to that hapu or that tribal grouping, and feel comfortable and at least protected that kei te tautoko tia tērā tangata e te whānau, e te hapu, e ngā hapu, e te iwi, nā rātou e rā ke kōrero. So yeah, for tourism providers that aren't of that iwi, of that geographical area or that iwi, I would suggest firstly establish a relationship with the whānau hapu and iwi, and then see if there's an opportunity there to trade of equal value kōrero tuku iho for something else, whether that's a whakaaro or koha ki te whānau, ki te hapu, ki te iwi, nā rātou e rā kōrero, or just hire a Ngāti Porou person to deliver that kōrero in your tourism venture.
Kia ora. Kia ora. So there you have it, whānau. If you're single and you're looking to have a business in Ngāti Porou, Ngārimu's got plenty of cousins that you can marry in. So yeah, ngā rawe, ngā mihi kia koutou, Ngāti Porou, pēhea koutou o Taranaki. What about you fellas of Taranaki? Hemi, have you got any pointers or any suggestions of how one might go about accessing those from them?
Yeah, I think people just need to work out how they're going to contribute back to the community that they're taking from. Yeah, if that means marrying off your daughter or your son, then so be it. Ka pai I moe au te wahine o Ngāti Porou, there kua paepae au. So yeah, I think that's really, really important to not forget. How do we give back to the communities that we're taking from? Or that can be in various ways, right? Wearing my iwi hat, I definitely know that we won't tell you anything if we don't trust you. So how do you build trust? That takes a long time, and it takes a lot of time, energy, and effort to be part of a community, and that generally takes the form of contribution towards what the community holds dear, what's important to the community, what's important to our whānau and hapuru, and not about what you can take or get every time. So, you know, that takes time.
Ngārimu, could you please tell us about your favourite pūrākau?
Well, me pēnei taku kōrero. Depending on the day, my pūrākau sort of change. You know, depending on what the vibe is at the time, because and Hemi mentioned this I roto I ana kōrero te puta o te riri ki waitara ka toro te ahi ki te motu. That's the role of the pūrākau. It's being able to distill the profound into the simple. E whai ai te taringa te hinengaro a te tamariki, e whai ai te hinengaro a ngā mātua, e whai ai te hinengaro a ngā tīpuna. So, you know, this time, I think, Monday the 8th, we just, timatanga o te wiki, we had a thing about International Women's Day. He rā whakanui ngā wāhine. Koe I'll put this picture, roto o Ngāti Porou whakanui a ngā wāhine ngā wākatoa. Disclaimer, ka oti tērā aku. But, e whai haere ana I te āhuatanga ki te tapu ai wahine, tiro atu koe ki ngā whakarongo atu koe ki ngā kōrero tuku iho o roto o ngā iwi. Te āhuatanga kia te pikinga o tāwhaki ki te rangi, te āhuatanga hoki kia rua te pupuke, te ruruku ki te hōhonutanga o ngā wai ki te tiki te tāonga o te whakairo. Now, people are going, well, what's the relevance of International Women's Day to that? And I said, well, taku whakautu tērā kōrero. In both of those situations, nā te wahine I tuku te mātauranga ki ngā tānera e tutuki ai a rātou kaupapa. It was Hene Matikotai who gave Rua Te Pupuke the plan e riro ai tāna tama, e riro anō hoki ai I te āhuatanga ki te whakairo. It was Whaititi Matakaka, nānei tuku ngā whatu ki a tāwhaki e tutuki pai I ana mahi. So, this week, e whirinaki ana I runga I te kānoi o te uha, ngā Pūrakau marangake ai te kauwai o ngā wahine ki runga. But I talk about that and I say that that's what my perspective. You know, te rape he rereke ngā perspectives o iwi ke atu to those same stories. But koina, mo tēnei wā, koina ngā Pūrakau, te rukunga, te ngalonga o manuruhi ki te moana, te haerenga o Rua Te Pupuke ki tōna tipuna kia Tangaroa. Kia Tangaroa ko pautū ko Rua Te Pupuke. Ta haruku atu ki te hōhonutanga, ki hui te ananui te whare o Tangaroa. Te tūponotanga atu kia Hene Matikotai. Te pātai atu, hei, me pēhea e pai ai tāku tiki atu I tāku tama. Nā ka whāngai te kuia rā te mātauranga ki aia. Ka tīmata I te whakariterite I tāna rautaki e tiki ai ia, e ora ai ia me tāna tama. Ko nā hoki ka puta ke te whakahokinga mai o tāna tama ki te ao mārama nei, ka whakahoki tia mai anō te āhuatanga ki te whakairo. Now, you talk about that, and that's a massive story, and it's quite a neat sort of pūrākau, te kōrero. But you talk about it, well, what's the relevance of Tangaroa to whakairo? Now, if you look at the waves, at the way the waves crash against the rocks and chip away at the rocks, ka kite koina te whakatinanatanga o te pupuke, o rua I te pupuke, o rua I te parakore, whenever the wave chips away or wears away at the rock, it removes the para that's left from the chipping away, and removes also the kukakore, removes away the essence of that part of the rock. So koina tētahi āhuatanga te whakariterite I ngā Pūrakau o tātou tīpuna hei whainga mā tātou. Because I'll tell you what, and I suspect that ka tautoko tia e tēnei hunga, ngā pūtaiao or the sciences of this day, they're only just catching up to the knowledge of our stories, of our Pūrakau. And we've been telling those Pūrakau for years. He pērā no te science, it's only now starting to catch up. You know, just to carry hara te mea pahu noho, but you know te rū whenua. You know, I roto I ngā kōrero tuku iho o roto o Te Arawa o tūwhare toa, heke mai ki roto ki te waiata aroha puhi wahine, ka rongo koe nau te āhuatanga, ka hoki au ki taku whenua tupu ki te waikoro pupu, I heria mai nei, I Hawaii ki rāno e ngā toroirangi, me ona tuahine a te hoata me te pupu, e hūrā I tongariro. You know, and like, that's a tipuna kei te taki haere e rā kōrero, and only now the science is starting to follow the hika. That same fault line kei te rere atu I whakaari, ka puake I whakaari, ka hala mai ki roto ki ngā puia I roto o rotorua, rero mai raro te whenua, ka taurawa ki roto o tongariro. So you're like, science now is only just catching on ki ngā kōrero, just being able to explain ngā kōrero pūrākau, kōrero tuku iho ao tātou tipuna. And that's very lightweight delivery from me. No te mea nā tūwhare toa, nā ngāuri o Te Arawa e rā kōrero. But that's, nā te rāwaho e whai whakaaro ana ki a rātou kōrero.
And what about you, Hemi? Is there a particular pūrākau that stands out for you over the years that's, I don't know, maybe shaped the way you think?
One that always stands out for me, well, a couple, maybe 2 or 3 that always stand out for me in different contexts is when I, you know, the maunga is a kind of a prevalent symbol here for us. Taranaki te maunga. So, you know, I'm always referencing back the Pūrakau and the accounts that talk about, you know, his arrival here and the connection that we have with the people in the Central Plateau. And as Ngārimu says, there's a lot of historical and, well, his scientific evidence, geological evidence now that talks about the geology and its similarity here to that of parts of the Central Plateau. So, you know, I always look at the maunga and use that as a reference point for us in terms of how he came to be and what the maunga symbolises for us in terms of permanence, in terms of resilience and being resilient in the things we do and so on and so forth. And then we have to be like a rock sometimes in times of adversity. One of the ones that, well, I suppose there's many, but are the accounts of Maui and Ngārimu and and of course Maurice and Te Waharoa will have a connection to that to Maui and his deeds. You know, he's a hero of 1,000 faces that, for me, talk about his pursuit of our knowledge and identity. You know, so those accounts of Maui, I think, are always going to play a key part in my life because you know the deeds that Maui brought back for us actually transformed our society. They've become ritualized in some of the things that we do. He took a whole lot of adventures, doing a whole lot of different things, and that can be paralleled to all the iwi in our motu and Te Waharoa, and that, you know, he becomes a reference point for me a lot, especially when, you know, nānei hi te ika, ko Maui pōtiki te tangata, ko piki mai rau ea te mata, ko haha whenua te ika. That's a pūrākau that resonates with me. Nānei tō mai te rā, nānei here mai te ahi, nānei whakatō mai ki roto ki ngā rākau, hei whakamānei te tangata, you know, and all of those things. And nā wai I ako, nā te kuia. And so Maui and his 1,000 faces, I'll say, and his many faces and many deeds that he carried out, you know, really resonate with me even to this day. And another big one for me is because pai ki au te hiika, pai ki au te haere ki te moana, ngā kōrero o tēnei takiwā mō te haerenga mai o te kahawai. He kōrero nui tēnā, engari, you know, accounts about these tupuna ko tūranga pūrehua and te rangi paitaha and the arrival of the kahawai here, which is prevalent in certain river mouths, and it's kind of become a blueprint for us to know where to go fishing. And so, yeah, I suppose those are the key ones that resonate with me, bro, and provide a connection provide a connection for me to every part of this country. Just circling back on that kōrero about how Taranaki's kind of developed the system. I think Parihaka's become really synonymous with the poi. So what we're finding is a lot of the old poi that were composed during the mid to late 1800s actually have reference points with all of our key creation stories, with Tiki, with Maui, with Apakura, with Tāne, with all of these godly figures that have provided values, principles, and rituals for us that we do today. So just a little bit of an adjunct there. The poi, they're all encapsulated in the poi, and they were regurgitated during the time of Parihaka to apply to some of the principles of the time and provided inspiration for our people to continue with the fight.
Yeah, what about you, Maurice? Is there any particular Pūrākau that you would like to share that stands out for you and maybe your iwi?
The Pūrākau, looking at our different ancestors, you know, you can see it tells us what rangatira behaviour is, really, and I guess one of the key stories for us with Ngāi Tahu is the one of Hemi Sundgren. Hemi Sundgren, she was of Māori, and she lived at a place called Waipapa, which is north of Kaikoura here, and Waipapa got attacked from the Rangatani tribe that were living in the Waido at the time, and she was taken prisoner back to the mouth of the Waido. And Kuri, or our hapu, the hapu of Ngāi Tahu, Ngāti Kuri, not to be confused with Ngāpuri Kuri, but our Kuri, we had migrated from Whanganui Atara into the Marlborough Sounds, and we went down from the Marlborough Sounds and attacked the Waido Pa, and we took Hemi Sundgren captive. And the chief of the waka, or the big guy, was Tuta Urutira. And he could tell by the way she carried herself that she was someone of importance or someone with mana. And so he put her in his waka. And as the waka went out from the Waido to head back north to the Sounds, she spotted Te Parenuia or Whiti, and she started to tangi. And Tuta Urutira said to her, you know, ko waikoe, who are you? And she said who she was and how she is from Waipapa. And Tuta Urutira, he had heard about this famous maunga with the taramea and the tikumu but also this famous spring, Haumakariri, that was down there. And he said, look, if we take you back, will we be okay? And her words to him was, to you I'm nobody, but to my people I'm above and they're below. And she was talking about whakapapa. And so Tuta Urutira took her back, and they married and lived happily ever after. But you know, and so Te Parenui o Whiti, and through that marriage, Te Parenui o Whiti is Ngāi Tahu's northern boundary as a result of that Pūrākau. And so they married, and a younger chief of Kuri also went with him. His name was Te Apoka, and you know, he had a couple of Māmoe wives as well, and they would go to the pa every day, and he went down one early morning to go out fishing, and he didn't want any big rigmarole about it, but he snuck onto one of the waka, and when they were a couple of miles out to sea, he popped up, and they were Māmoe waka, and they seen who he was, and so they wanted to take him back to you know, to welcome him properly, and he said, oh no, I just want to fish, pretty much, and so he went fishing, and they went further out, and you know, and the importance of that little wee story is when Ngāi Tahu, when we were going through our claim process, and especially with our fishing, the Crown said to us that we weren't offshore. We had no deep sea fishing, and so that Pūrākau showed that actually, well, we did. And we took that Pūrākau to the court, and we won our deep sea quota. So I guess it's the power of those stories, and is what I look at. And so that sort of that Pūrākau for us is for Ngāi Tahu is pretty important. A, because it was the union between Māmoe and Ngāi Tahu, and B, it was pinpoints our northern boundary today, and C, we got our deep sea quota.
Pūrākau is a very powerful thing, and after listening to everything you've said today, I suppose it's probably, for me personally, it's created the way Māori view the world that they live in today, and just like the rākau, he rāno i te rākau, he rahi o nā peka. And I suppose when you talk about Pūrākau, you talk about whakapapa, you talk about ori. We've talked about mō teatea. Within each mō teatea, every composition, there's a Pūrākau behind it, into why they composed the item, whakatauki, pera i te tūhono ngā rangi te ao rere ki a Te Arawa, haere atu a tūhoe ki roto i a Te Arawa, ia rātou e pakanga ana, ia hinga haere ana Te Arawa, ka mea ti te pāpā o rangi te ao rere, e hoki, ka pātai atu a rangi te ao rere, hea hai, ka ki ati tana pāpā, kai te pakanga mātou, kua tata te hinga, ka ki ake a te rangi te ao rere, e ko tahi nā tūhoe ka kata te pō. And if you watched the Blues game a couple of weekends ago, whānau, ka taia te whakahanga i taua Pūrākau, ia rātou e whakanga ana i ngā Hurricanes. There was a particular tūhoe number 10, ka kata te pō i taua rā, nō reira. I suppose there's a lot of relevance you could grab from old school Pūrākau mai ngā rao nehe, and ka taia te whakahanga i ki ngā ahuatanga o tēnei rā. Nō nei, he matakite o tātou tipuna. Is there any Pūrākau that you could possibly relate to, that you know of, that you could relate to things happening in the world today? Ngārimu.
Me pēnei hoki te whakautu i tērā kōrero, like within all of these Pūrākau and all of those Pūrākau, you know, and Hemi picked up on that one to ahua whakahihi pēr tāku whakahua i tāku tipuna i a Māui me tōna tipuna i a muriranga whenua hoi. Tēnā koe Hemi te picking up on that one and carrying that through. But te āhuatanga o ngā kōrero tuku iho. Now I'll say this, and e whirinaki hoki tēnei ki runga ki tō taha whānau apanui whiti aua. Now, kua roa a Ngāti Porou ngā wāhine o Ngāti Porou e kaha ana, e maranga ana, e takatu ana, e kōrero ana i runga i ngā marae. Now, taua āhuatanga, that the symbolism of that is i roto o Ngāti Porou, there are two peaks on Hikurangi. On Hikurangi, te maunga tuatahi ka whitingia e te rā. Ko tētahi o ngā tihi ko te tipi o Taikehu. Te tipi o Taikehu e tāne tērā i roto i ngā whakapapa. Te tipi, well, I'll let you fellas explain, it might be too R-rated on this, te whakapākehā. And then ko tētahi atu, o ngā tihi ko te tone o hauku, which also will probably be a little bit too R-rated as if I translate that. Hoi, he orite i ngā tihi rā, those peaks are equal, e orite ai te mana o te wahine me te tāne i roto o Ngāti Porou. Now, also i roto o Ngāti Porou ko te nuinga, ko te nuinga o ngā whare tipuna, o ngā whare nui i roto o Ngāti Porou, ko ingoatia ki ngā wāhine. Because in Ngāti Porou, a lot of the senior lines of descent ka heke ke ki runga ki te wāhine, kaua ki runga ki te tāne. So, with that, kua whirinaki ngā wāhine o Ngāti Porou ki runga ki tā rātou whakapapa e pai ei tā rātou kawe haere i a rātou i runga i te mata o te whenua. So I'd say all that to say, International Women's Day and the strength of the woman. I roto I Te Ao Maori has always been there. It's just the rest of the world is starting to catch up to us. Like the rest of the world, science is starting to catch up to our Pūrakau. Ngā kōrero Pūrakau, ngā kōrero tuku iho a tātou tipuna, and Hemi and Maurice have mentioned it, set the framework for how, and you mentioned it too, Whitia, how we view and conduct ourselves I roto I te ao tūroa nei. So, I roto I tērā, kimihia ngā kupuhuna, kimihia ngā kōrero huna, I roto I ngā Pūrakau. And each of them is all has, you know, that all of these stories, even the sort of generic stories that we have, and I say generic in respects to that a lot of the we know it, not that they're just casual stories, tāonga tuku iho he tapu hoki e rā kōrero, but we all have our different perspectives of it, of those stories. Nā I roto I te waipaunamu, ko te waka a Māui, ko tā rātou motu tēnā, kai te pai tēnā. I roto I a mātou o Ngāti Porou, ko nuku tai memehe te waka, ko huri poki, ko tāpuke te irungo o hikurangi. He kōrero anō tērā. So, I say all this to say, I roto I ngā kōrero tuku iho, me tūwhera tō ngākau me tō hinengaro ki ngā perspectives a wetahi ke atu, to help inform your own and to fill in possibly the gaps where there are some that you get a more well-rounded story, and you'll find ko etahi o ngā kōrero huna I roto I ngā Pūrakau, ko ngā whakautu kei roto I ngā kōrero a iwi ke atu.
Yeah, Pūrakau have shaped the way Māori view the world, and I believe other races around New Zealand, if they were to view the world the same as we do, as everything's a living being. Everything's a living being. He kōrero tā te rākau, he kōrero tā te awa, he kōrero tā ia mea. Tā ia mea. So Hemi, if we were to look at the world like that now, I suppose global warming wouldn't be an issue. I suppose a lot of these things that are happening in the world today wouldn't be happening if we were to listen to our Pūrakau. And I suppose there's a lot of examples through ngā poropiti, o roto taranaki, e mauai te rongo. Just last year, there was the peaceful protest at Ehu Mātau that come out with a good result. So in our Pūrakau, there's he tohu kai roto, he akoranga kai roto mai a tātou mātua tipuna. Are you able to share with us some of those, Hemi?
Our Pūrakau provide a blueprint for us in the way we kind of have ritualized certain things in the way we do things, and also provide a blueprint for us to continue on with or reset back to some of the things that we need to, that we hold important. And so, tēnei mea te maungaro, I think the maungaro that you'll see that everyone will probably be familiar with around Parihaka and its approach is being carried through today. Well, how does that apply to the things that are done today? I definitely know that at Parihaka, they've reset the community back into a focus on how tēnei mea te maungaro, how tēnei mea te rongo maraeroa, how ngā mahi a rongo. So that community has embedded some activities and some programs of works into things such as gardens, into peace and conflict, and how to resolve that. Tēnei mea te manawa nui and resilience, and how does rongo show up in that kind of form. And so, the Pūrakau history and accounts of passive and active resistance are showing up in the way in which the old people did back in the day, which was ngā ringa ki roto I te one through gardening, whakataukai, ngā mahi a rongo, he whakatakoto I te huarahi, he rautaki, mō te whakatutukitanga I te kaupapa, strategies and pieces of work that seek resolution in potential causes of conflict. And so those are showing up in today's context, Whitiaua, and they're all being referenced back to these Pūrakau and kōrero I puta mai ai te wā e mātatoru ana Parihaka. Hope that answers your question.
Kia ora.
I think just circling back a little bit on the I still use the Maui accounts as a foundation for me. And so if I use the example of tēnei mea te hi te ika, where Maui, in simple terms, fished up the land, if we talk about that in the context of navigating a pathway, we have to pull up our own fish, and whatever form that fish takes in terms of the struggles or the big kaupapa that we have, for me, that Maui set that blueprint. How do we take hold of the rays of the sun to help guide us and provide some warmth and protection during the journeys that we have to take? Nā nei kumea te rā kia roa. For me, that's about how do we harness the light and sun and warmth to take the journeys that we have to do. And so I use those as the basis on the daily in the challenges and pieces of work that I have. When I go out to the tide, ngā kōrero, ngā Pūrakau, mo tūranga pūrehua, mo tangaroa, mo te hiika, they all provide the basis for me and the approach that I take to do that in line with a tikanga.
In terms of Pūrakau, do you believe it's only traditional stories, stories from our tipuna, or can Pūrakau be created today? Like, could we tell a story about Ngārimu Parata and his quest for his shining, beautiful tūhoe woman from Ruatoki? Is there a possibility that maybe the Pūrakau could be created, or a story could be told of somebody of today?
Yep, yeah, for sure. And I sort of, I don't know about Ngārimu, but myself on the rugby league field, it was beautiful. And I got heaps of good stories about that. But anyway, I sort of, for me, I look at my ancestors, and it sets me in their stories, and it sets my behaviour today. An example is we have an ancestor called Maru Kaitatia, and if I go back 13 generations, he was around at that time, and he was quite a tall man, and he had probably 20 abs, just like me, and good looking, of course. And this guy Maru Kaitatia, he done some things which would be seen unusual. For example, when he was up in Whanganui Atara, there we had a bit of a battle with Ngāti Ira, and after the battle, there was the traditional kai tangata, and the ovens were being prepared, but and he took two of our Ngāi Tahu ancestors who had been killed in the battle and took them over to the enemy who had been defeated, and basically said, "You eat me and I'll eat you." And there was another occasion when down in Kaikoura, and his son-in-law was Māmoe, and he had been captured by Maru Kaitatia's two younger brothers, and he was killed. And so what Maru Kaitatia did was got the son-in-law, cooked him, and ate him himself on his own. Apparently it took 3 days, and you'd look at that and you think, oh gee, that's a bit strange. But what he was about, that particular ancestor, was about protecting his whakapapa, and his whakapapa was his family. And so I look at that today, and I look at and you ask the question, what is rangatira behaviour? And for, if you look at him, it's about protecting his family, which is relevant today. That's what we need to do. We need to look after our family. And how do you do that? And that's through working, through loving, and so in his time, that's what he had to do to look after his family. For me in my time, You know, I need to do, well, not to eat someone, but I need to look after my family. I need to protect their whakapapa. I need to, you know, work, put food on the table, make sure they're loved. You know, that's rangatira behaviour. And so that's how you know, you bring in those stories of the past. Every story of our past is relevant to today. And if we take a look at our creation stories, although different iwi have different versions and different hapus have slightly different versions, you know, we would not have global warming today if we understood, if the world understood our creation story.
Maurice, Pūrakau is such a powerful tool, powerful tāonga, and yeah, I believe it's the reason of the outlook that Māori have to the world today. Hui anō, if you were to choose a couple of ngā tāonga roto i te Pūrakau, looking forward to tomorrow, what would some of those tāonga be that could create a better tomorrow for not only Māori but for all of New Zealand in regards to Pūrakau? What can they take out of it to create a better world?
Getting our stories, learning the stories, learning the patterns, the behaviours, understand and getting all the different versions, because, you know, you see one story can be seen through 10 different eyes and they can all be slightly different, but getting all them stories and that, you know, and to signal out one is pretty hard, because there's so many that could help us with the future. Yeah, and again, I guess I'll have to go back to our version of the creation story, you know, and you know, the Papa Tūhono and Ranginui and the love there, but Ranginui and his other wives as well, you know, and the winds, and, you know, it's you know, it should be taught in our schools, and if it was taught in our schools, the next generation and the generation after that would have a much better understanding of our environment, and you know, maybe you know, there wouldn't be any plastic in our ocean impacting on Tangaroa and stuff like that, you know. So yeah, I think yeah, it's about learning and understanding our stories about our ancestors, about our ways, and taking that into the future, because it worked back then, works today, it should work in the future. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Pēhea koe, Ngārimu, he kōrero anō wāhau, hei tāpiri atu ki wā Maurice.
Yeah, te tautoko ake i rā kōrero, kai roto i ngā Pūrakau, i ngā kōrero tuku iho, ngā rautaki hei whāinga mā tātou i tēnei te ao ki konei. Now, you know, just talk to you, like, ko tētahi o ngā kōrero hua ke roto i ngā kōrero tuku iho o Ngāti Porou, ko te umanga nui o nehe rā he pakanga. Tērā kōrero, the battlefield of my ancestors was war, or the business of my ancestors was war. Now, ki te pēnā tātou, whakarite tātou i tērā ahuatanga ki a te ao e tūnei, kei te pērā tonu. The world is still the same. The business of today is war. Ko te mea ke, ko rereke, ko te pae o te pakanga, ko te papa o te pakanga. So war is not usually being carried out with ngā rākau atu mātauinga. They're usually being carried out by businesses. So I say all that to say is, you know, e te iwi Māori, e ngā iwi o te motu, o ngā iwi e whakarongo mai nā ahakoa kaiwhea koutou I runga I tēnei ao. Ruruku hia te hōhonutanga o kōrero, tuku iho o Pūrakau, and try and find a place for them. If it does not immediately reveal its place to you in this day and age, ruku hōhonotia ngā kōrero, so that it can be, those kōrero tuku iho, those pūrākau can be applied in these modern settings, because kai reira katoa, there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun, and our tipuna have already been through it. Your whakapapa, no matter how hato whakapapa, you've already been through it in one way, shape or form. It's just whakapapa tia te kōrero, whakapapa tia te mahi. Just pull it out through all your genealogy and practice it I roto I te ao kiko te ao huri nei. So that's what I would sort of just add to Maurice. There's, yeah, ki tā Maurice kōrero.
Pehea koe. What about you, Hemi? Is there anything you'd like to add to those kōrero just to finish our discussion today?
Yeah, ka pai e rā kōrero, just to add to our kete on that particular kaupapa. If I kind of try and peel away all the layers, I kind of see, you know, if there was any tāonga that were to come out of tēnei mea te Pūrakau, I think it comes down to identity and understanding and knowing who we are genealogically, but more importantly, understand our relationship with each other and our place in the world, that we fit with each other. And I think if we have a deeper appreciation of those things through the application of Pūrakau and those stories that connect us together, and you know, I think that's a real tāonga for us. So we've seen all the metrics and understand the struggles that people go through. I can't help wondering whether or not it's associated with you know, this thing called identity. I know that's a big deep rabbit hole to dive down into, but I think, you know, Pūrakau, if we take that as a mechanism or a tool or a system of some sort, how maybe that you know, Pūrakau can be used to help understand who we are and what our place in the world is. And if we were to apply that to an operator or a tourism business, for instance, then, you know, how does a tourism business understand itself, its why, its purpose, and what it contributes back to its communities through the use of Pūrakau? And you know, maybe just one lasting point is that, you know, how do we get to employ Pūrakau or kōrero, tribal kōrero or whānau kōrero, that helps us contribute towards something bigger than ourselves? And I kind of see, and that those are the kaupapa that we give back to and contribute towards, yeah. And if we read, you know, we could apply that thinking across all of the Pūrakau that we see emanating from different parts of the country. I think, you know, a lot of it comes down to how people are committing to a kaupapa that's bigger than themselves. Kia koira ka tupua ai te tangata, I roto I tana kawe I te kaupapa nui ake I aia I tōna tinana tonu. And yeah, maybe just one last point. Rukuhia te hohonutanga o te kurahuna I roto I nei Pūrakau. What are these Pūrakau telling us about providing principles and values for a way for us to live our life? So yeah, ka nui tērā māku.
Yeah, kei te tika katoa we rā kōrero, and I'm sure the listeners, when they do get to listen to all the kōrero that's been shared today, will walk away with a wealth of knowledge. And just to end as well, for me, I suppose Pūrakau, for myself, ka pua wai tēnei mea te whakahiti, I roto I te Pūrakau no te mea me pēnei pēr te kōrero, I roto I te wānanga o te ngū, ka rongo, ma te whakako, ka mōhio. And by listening, you get to understand where people come from, you get to understand their background, and also through Pūrakau we get to, I suppose, see a bigger meaning in terms of it's just not a tree. E kōrero tō te raka, the tree's actually been there longer than us, so it's probably got more Pūrakau to tell than me and you. And going for a swim in the beach, it's just not the beach. Ko tangaroa tērā. And ko ngā kai o roto, hei whāngai I te iwi. Aua tū momo mea katoa, you only take as much as you should. Don't take too much, you only take a feed. All those things come out of Pūrakau, and yeah, ka puta mai ko te whakaiti no reira aku rangatira, I runga I rā kōrero. Wau tēnei e noho whakaiti nei mua I a koutou, I aku pakeke. Me pēnei pēr te kōrero aha kua kaunga tōpito katoa tātou o te mutu. ka hoki ake ki te kōrero a te matua tangata, te kōti arikirangi te tūruki. Ia e karore ana i te motu, e whakapāho ana i tana whakapono, ka pātai atu te hunga tāngata ki aia. A mena koe nei tō whakapono, kaihia o whare karakia. A ka ki ake a te kōti, ko te rangi, ko te whenua, hei whare huinga mo ngā iwi katoa o te motu no reira aku rangatira. A kei te mihi kia koutou, I just want to send a very, very warm Thanksgiving to all of you for joining us today. The English is not the sharpest, so I'll leave it at the Māori no reira aku rangatira. Tēnā tātou, kia ora tātou katoa. Too much, boys. Boys, thank you very much.